I'm very happy to introduce you to Alan Ruppersberg, that invited from the Basel Art Fair to make a little presentation of a project, of a two-parts project, in fact, or even a three-part project if we include this fantastic poster. That initially started as, I'm sorry, you have a strange noise, no?
It seems hard to hear or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do you hear? Or? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah?
Because otherwise I can shout without a microphone
There's
as well.
There's a little funny feedback or something. But
yeah, there's a feedback. So let's go directly to this project. Alan Ruppersberg, that I know from former experience and former publications, contacted me for doing this strange project that was supposed to come for an occasion of an exhibition in Santa Monica Museum this year, which is the reprint of a guest informant book, a book from Mark Hopkins' Hotel from the 1950s. You might know that the hotel was one of the famous hotels of the time. I think the first one was...
it still is a really very big deal hotel.
The first one was a panoramic bar on top of it or something like that.
Yeah, there was something like that.
They were advertising it as one key feature of the hotel in the walls. And so this guest informant book that you can find in your hotel room at the time has been reproduced, reprinted. And on top of it, Alan has collaged personal images that he took from different occasions, work occasion, travel, personal souvenirs. And so they are basically snapshots that are loaded with a personal memory of the time when this photograph was taken and recollaged on something that was supposed to be a promotional guide to the city of San Francisco and the region of California, of Southern California in general.
Yeah, it's a kind of generic book. I mean, they still have them in hotels, but they're not as elaborate as that was at the time. And so they were kind of a generic book that went to all hotels, and then they would just, whatever region, they would just put the pages in about that region. So even though this one happened to come from the Mark Hopkins Hotel, there was probably, all over the hotels in LA and San Francisco, they probably had them. It's just that I had found this one years ago and had just kind of stashed it away for some future use. And then when it came time to think about a catalog for the exhibition,
so
it popped up.
It's a common trait in your work, that it's a recurring factor, that you take a look at cultural artifacts that are produced, you gather them, collect them, not necessarily using them immediately, sometimes years and years after. And I wanted to ask you, how did you come with this idea to conflate these very personal photographs that for any reader might be quite mysterious? Like, I maybe recognize 2 or 3 artists photographed in the book because I have met them previously or because I'm part of the art world, but there are numerous photographs that I have no clear idea what they relate to, what they really describe, etc.
Well, I'm trying to think exactly how I came up with the idea, but basically the fact that it's a Southern California tour guide, and so you have all these kind of great graphics and great ads, and all the stuff that looks better with time, and then every time I do a catalog for a museum show or something, I kind of always like to have it be a kind of half artist book and half fulfill the role of museum catalogs that have to have their information in there and that people can work with.
So the information is somewhere in the book.
Yeah.
I mean, not necessarily easy to find, but
this was where it started, was to try and negotiate boundary between a real official catalog and another artist's book, so that every catalog that I've done for major museum shows, each one is a little bit, it's a kind of an original.
Yeah. And to me, it evoked some previous publications you did, because the fact that it was a hotel guest informant book was also like a predetermined category of books that you appropriated to, you know, collage your own reading and past, which is in a way what the Als Grand Hotel was also proposing somehow, which for the member of the audience was an interesting project that Alan did in the early 70s, where he rented or found an hotel that he redesigned, I mean, created particular sculptures and environments. In each room was different, and that was proposed to any member of any community in LA to rent for a room for a night or for more than a night. And I've been looking at the registration book that you recently found out by our common friend Christophe, and I was amazed that many people, in fact, did live this experience. I mean, they did register for a night at the hotel.
Yeah, that's a whole discussion in itself.
Yeah. So for me, when you proposed this project, there was something like a parallel to this type of.
As time goes on, you see how they all relate like that. But the point of this show, the title of the exhibition, or the title of the museum show, the exhibition, was The Art of Give and Take. And so there's works in the exhibition where you can take things home with you. And so it kind of relates to the guest informant. People probably stole those, or I mean, how did I get it? I don't know. I bought it at a flea market or something. But and so this one being Southern California, and then I decided that I had never shown my own, you know, when I was thinking about putting, well, what illustrations of what shows you put, you know, like typical thoughts about, you know, museum catalogs, I realized that this was all about Southern California, and I had all of my own personal snapshots and images that I had taken over 15, 20 years for different projects. And of course, that's all over the world. And so then it's like this kind of local guide to Southern California overlaid with my own personal photos that I had never published before.
And this title also indicates another dimension of the project, which is the second part of, I mean, this all over, let's say, strange happening that we are living today, which is that this art of give and take, this economy of trade, of gift, of exchange, which is something you developed in your work over the last decades, is something that is particularly played not within the book, but within a record that I think it's so arriving.
Yeah, the record, we'll get it out here in a minute, but yeah, I mean, even you mentioned the hotel. It's also the same. You know, it's some kind of exchange on a normal level, and some kind of standard exchange rate. So this was an LP, a nice fresh vinyl record that I made for the exhibition. It's part of one of the works. It's an edition of 300, and it's a compilation of found homemade records that, you know, were made in the 40s and 50s that you can find on the internet and stuff. And then, you know, old gospel, and, you know, it's a mix that has to do with the theme of the one work that it came from. And so I'll explain this idea here a little bit, because it really doesn't translate too well in this atmosphere, because there's no previous way of anybody knowing about this. But I had the idea that I would trade one of these albums for a box of old snapshots, because I had used a lot of old snapshots from flea markets in the exhibition that had made up part of the work. And so, you know, if I'm going around in a flea market and I see a little shoebox full of old snapshots and want to buy them, they're usually about $50. And, you know, like they kind of try and get $1 a piece for old snapshots now. And so the record would normally sell for about $50. So I thought, okay, well, maybe we can do some kind of trade. And I had set it up at the museum, but it never really got publicized right, or, you know, so, but that was the general idea. So if anybody wants to run home and get their old photographs, are perfectly welcome to do that. But I also realized that, you know, that we could probably do it by mail, like good old-fashioned mail. If somebody wants to trade a record, you know, they can send me the photos and I'll sign the record and send it back, you know, like an eBay thing. That's probably the only way it would work in this situation.
But so in this project, you again trade personal memories from perfect strangers with memories, I mean,
different
from the songs
kind of memories, yeah.
that you collected, but you also don't know the origins of these. And then,
well, I mean, the photos on the cover too are ones that I found and used in the work, and it's people playing music. So it's, you know, it's all found photos, found sounds. But there's when you see the whole work, there's a real kind of overall theme to it all. It was called Art, and the full title of the album and of the show is Art and Therefore Ourselves, Songs, Recipes, and the Old People. And one of the things that's on this album here is that I had a bunch of old recipes that, you know, from the turn of the century or on up into the 50s, weird recipes. And I used them in the exhibition, but I also asked my friend Bill Berkson, the poet, if he would read the recipes for the album. And so on here is the poet Bill Berkson reading some of the old recipes, which sound fantastic when he reads them. He's a very good reader of his own work, and so he did a great job of reading the recipes. So there's songs and recipes on here.
And how do you, I mean, we did already experiment a little bit with this exchange situation or trade situation. That, I mean, you did trade tables, for instance, where you were inviting people to trade something for something else. We did that once in Basel at the art fair.
Yeah, we did. There was one of the other books that got published. We, well, it was actually gave it away. There was one that I actually gave away. It was not ever allowed to be sold.
That was a complicated rights reason as well.
Exactly. Lots of complicated reasons, but it also fit right in with with what I like to do anyway. And now, of course, that free book appears on eBay, and people buy it, but not from me.
What price?
Huh?
I always wondered what price. I mean, not expensive. Expensive?
It gets a little expensive, yeah. And it's supposed to be never sold.
Yeah.
But,
I remember that.
You know, you can't control all of that. So.
I tried to do the distribution for a book that you can never sell, which is extremely complicated to explain to booksellers.
That's right. Well, how should we
I think we
halfway through
love to invite you to have a look at the book and have a look at the record. But of course, if you have questions for Alan, we are happy to make a microphone pass in.
And I'm happy to sign the book too, if you want. And if you want to negotiate a trade, we can do that. So, you know, it's just we should make it kind of as informal as possible here. And if you want to ask a question or whatever, that's fine too.
I was actually interested in the poster that you guys did. If you could just, because I know you've done a lot of posters like that, and you always do them with Colby, the printer that's, I believe, there in Southern California. So I just was interested in hearing you talk a little bit about the poster projects that you do. Poster.
Well, the poster is something that Alan used very often in his work. Of course, the aesthetic of this poster is very specific, coming from, let's say, some kind of public announcement of concert, music, sometimes also DJ competitions,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
Made by a workshop in California that has been doing that since
So 40s.
the 40s. And that use a particular technique that they prepared first the colors, which is called iris print, on large sheets that they then cut, and then by letterpress they print the black text, which of course change from time to time. By this way, in a cheap manner, you obtain a very complex and changing design in a way of even some kind of unique posters, because I mean they're not large print runs. They are made to be outside. They are made to be posted as well outside, so they are very resisting. They're not meant to be glued
But yet
on
they
any way.
use a letterpress technique, which very few people do anymore. I mean, it used to be the way things were done, and it looks so much better than silkscreen, or most of it is done on computer, but they still hand set the letters, and it's still a very reasonable commercial.
There's a very loud, there's a very loud aesthetic that somehow becomes, I don't know, loaded with some kind of, with a past, let's say, because it's true that it's not something that, if you would like to design that again today, that would sound a bit wrong somehow.
But it's still totally normal to see on the streets for rock and roll shows and stuff. Oh, no, no. No, they have a pretty thriving business because they've also expanded into bus posters and, they do all the other normal kind of advertising stuff now too, but there's still people there who know how to do the letterpress. And that's the best part about it. And they have their own way of designing things, which is better than I could do. So I let them do it for the most part.
The initial idea is that it describes the possibility of this trade, giving a rendezvous of today, right now, where we are, which of course we should have posted the poster everywhere if we wanted the people. But I mean, there's this potential as well that is interesting, and that I think is quite generously simulated by that. Even if we knew that not so many people would come with their hands full of photographs in the Miami Basel fair, it's.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah, they don't know as they make them anymore, but I know the older ones look like that. That's true. As cheap as possible, that was the trick, yeah.
Hi, Alan, I was just wondering at the museum in the boxes, if those were photos from the flea markets and your own archive, or if they were...
Can you say it over again? That there's a big hum here
okay.
that is really hard to hear over.
In the exhibition in Santa Monica, the boxes of photographs that you have, are those from your own archive and what you found at the flea markets, or were they primarily found photographs?
Well, it's a mix. It's maybe, 80% found and 20% family of my own, family photographs, because my family happens to go back a long ways in the history of the town where I grew up. So I have a lot of historical photographs and stuff. So those are mixed in there too. But no, the collecting of the found photos, that's a good part of it. So they get passed on when you take them.
My name's Francesca. I'm really interested in the notion of the book that doesn't get sold. Is it because it's free, or is it because it needs to be disseminated, or what's the purpose?
Well,
because if the purpose is one of dissemination, then why don't you keep it and just digitalize it and put it up for free? There's a way to do it. I just think it's like an idea before its time.
Well, if you digitize it, it's not a book, and I want it's a book.
I think there was two elements. One thing is that Alan wanted to create a book, so a physical object that had a certain weight, with a certain paper, with a certain content. So the question of the digitalization was not, it's like if you're asking a painter what he chose, this color or this color. It wasn't making sense at the time. But this book that we did produce with a partner in Belgium for a special occasion couldn't be sold because of rights issues, because all the material was appropriated under the copyright, and it would have been impossible for, if you know the book, you understand why, to clear this copyright. So because we thought the object was quite fascinating, it shouldn't stay only like a, I don't know, like a pile of books that becomes a sculpture or an archive of a museum, we tried to organize a distribution of this book. So of course, when I was selling some of other books from other artists to a good bookshop, I was offering them for free. But of course, it was a complication because, as you know, a bookshop cannot sell something that has no value. But the bookshop could sell the book because they wouldn't have the problem with the copyrights because they were not the producers. So it became a kind of very complex trade operation that was randomly initiated here and in a show in Ljubljana. And I mean, very long story. But to cut it short, basically it circulated as a gift, which I thought was quite generous and quite beautiful for a book as well, because I believe that all the books I do, at least, are gift for the audience. I know what I pay for them, and I know what I sell for. And I think that's why, I mean, this object was interesting in the terms of its own circulation. I think it found its way. I mean, we got sold out. I mean, it was not sold, but we got out of stock.
I still have enough left that on certain occasions, and I did it at the Santa Monica Museum as one of their events, where I read from the book, and then after the reading is finished, then I give it away. And so I keep maybe 20 or so for each one of these readings, and, you know, eventually I won't be able to do any more readings because the book will be gone, but I still have enough to do, you know, a reading here and there, and then people just come up and I give it to them. It's a limited edition, so once they're gone, they're gone.
There's something that made you do it that I think has value, and that somehow that needs to not disappear.
Well, you know, I do it in all different kinds of works. You know, it appears one way in this particular book giveaway thing, and then, you know, there's another work where there's something else that's given away or you could take, or, you know, so over the years there's been many different ways of doing the same thing in a way. You know, this related to one particular project, but the things that are in the show from this catalog, there was also things to take, and they were free. So it kind of shows up, you know, I mean, in a way, if you wanted to go into a long discussion, you could go all the way back to the hotel, that when you stayed in the hotel, it didn't cost any more than it did the motel down the street. So it's, you know, it's kind of as a theme that gets played out in different ways. Well, if you want to look at the book and the record, maybe we ought to do that since the time is almost up here.